The stars burned cold above the mining colony of Kepler 442b as Sarah Chen pressed her face against the observation deck's reinforced glass. 3 months since the first contact, and still no word from Earth. The silence stretched across 47 light-years like a held breath, leaving the colonists to wonder if humanity even knew what had happened out here on the edge of known space. "Still nothing on the quantum relay," Marcus Thompson said, his voice carrying the weight of sleepless nights. The colony's communications officer had aged a decade in the past 12 weeks, his once brown hair now streaked with premature gray. "Whatever's jamming our signals, it's not natural." Sarah nodded, her reflection ghost-like in the glass. Beyond the transparent barrier, the alien ships hung in the rust-colored sky like metallic fruit, their surfaces smooth and featureless. Beautiful, in their way. Terrifying in their silence. "They're waiting for something," she murmured, more to herself than to Marcus. But what? The question had haunted her since the visitors, as the colonists had taken to calling them, first appeared 3 months ago. No demands. No communication beyond that initial, cryptic message broadcast across every frequency: "We seek the mercy of your kind. We have traveled far to find those who would show compassion to the lost." At first, the colonists had been hopeful. First contact with an alien species, and they came seeking mercy, not conquest. The colony's council had crafted careful responses, extending invitations for peaceful dialogue, offering assistance if the aliens were truly refugees as they claimed. But the visitors had remained silent, their ships maintaining a perfect orbital pattern around the planet. Watching. Waiting. And slowly, the colonists had begun to realize that perhaps the aliens' definition of mercy was different from humanity's. "Dr. Chen," a young voice called from behind her. Sarah turned to see Jenny Walsh, barely 22, and serving as the colony's xenobiology specialist despite having no actual xenobiology to study until 3 months ago. "The council's meeting in 10 minutes. They want your assessment." Sarah sighed, pulling herself away from the window. As the colony's chief psychologist, she'd been tasked with trying to understand the visitors' behavior, their motivations, their likely next moves. It was an impossible job, trying to analyze the psychology of beings that might not even think in ways humans could comprehend. The council chamber was a cramped space in the colony's central administrative building, its walls lined with display screens showing various colony statistics. Population, 2,847. Food stores, 73% capacity. Power generation, nominal. Defense capability, laughably inadequate. Colony Administrator Victoria Reeves sat at the head of the table, her silver hair pulled back in a severe bun that made her look older than her 60 years. Around her sat the other council members, Dr. James Patterson, the colony's chief medical officer, Engineer Rodriguez, who kept their machines running, Agricultural Supervisor Linda Kim, who kept them fed, and Security Chief David Park, who was supposed to keep them safe but had precious little to work with. "Dr. Chen," Administrator Reeves began without preamble, "it's been 3 months since the visitors arrived. Your initial assessment suggested they might be refugees seeking assistance. That assessment appears to have been optimistic." Sarah took her seat, feeling the weight of every pair of eyes in the room. "Administrator, I've been monitoring their behavioral patterns continuously. The orbital positioning, the maintenance of communications blackout, the systematic scanning of our installations, none of it suggests typical refugee behavior." "Then what does it suggest?" Security Chief Park leaned forward, his weathered face grim. "Because from where I sit, it looks like they're conducting surveillance prior to an invasion." "Perhaps," Sarah said carefully. "But there are other possibilities. The message they sent about seeking mercy, it could be genuine. But their understanding of mercy might be fundamentally different from ours." Dr. Patterson frowned. "Different how?" Sarah had been dreading this question, but it had to be addressed. What if, in their culture, mercy is something that must be earned? What if they're waiting for us to prove ourselves worthy of their compassion? A test? Administrator Reeves raised an eyebrow. "You're suggesting they're putting us through some kind of trial?" "It's possible. Many human cultures have concepts of earned mercy, trials by fire, tests of character, proving one's worth through adversity. If the visitors come from a similar cultural background, Then they might be waiting for us to do something, Engineer Rodriguez finished. But what? The question hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Outside, the alien ships continued their silent vigil, and the colonists continued their slow descent into paranoia and fear. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She wandered the colony's corridors, noting the subtle changes that had crept in over the past 3 months. The way people hugged the walls when they walked, as if trying to avoid invisible watchers. The way conversations stopped when she approached, then resumed in hushed whispers. The way children no longer played in the common areas, instead staying close to their parents with wide, frightened eyes. Fear was a poison, she knew. It changed people, made them capable of things they'd never consider under normal circumstances. And they'd been drinking that poison for 3 months now. She found herself in the colony's small chapel, a non-denominational space where colonists of various faiths, or no faith at all, could find a moment of peace. To her surprise, she wasn't alone. A figure sat in the front pew, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Jenny? Sarah approached the young woman carefully. Are you all right? Jenny Walsh looked up, her face streaked with tears. I can't stop thinking about them, she whispered. About what they might be planning. About what they might do to us. Sarah sat beside her, offering the comfort of human presence. We don't know that they plan to hurt us. Don't we? Jenny's voice was bitter. They show up, claiming to seek mercy, then go silent for 3 months while they study us like lab rats. That's not the behavior of peaceful refugees, Dr. Chen. That's the behavior of predators. The words hit Sarah like a physical blow because they echoed her own growing fears. We can't let fear control us, Jenny. We have to maintain hope. Hope? Jenny laughed, but there was no humor in it. Hope for what? That they'll decide we're worthy of their mercy? That they'll pat us on the head and go away? Or that they'll at least make it quick when they finally decide we've failed their test? Sarah had no answer. In the silence of the chapel, surrounded by symbols of human faith and hope, she felt the crushing weight of uncertainty. What did the visitors want? What was their test? And what would happen if humanity failed it? The answer came at dawn. The emergency klaxon woke the entire colony, its harsh wail cutting through the pre-dawn quiet like a knife. Sarah stumbled from her quarters, still half asleep, and found the corridors filled with panicked colonists all heading toward the main observation deck. She pushed through the crowd, her psychologist's training helping her read the crowd's mood. This wasn't the usual low-level anxiety that had plagued the colony for months. This was acute terror, the kind that came from a specific, immediate threat. What's happening? She called to Marcus Thompson, who was shoving his way through the crowd in the opposite direction. The ships, he shouted back. They're moving. Sarah's blood turned to ice. She fought her way to the observation deck, where a crowd had gathered at the windows. Administrator Reeves was there, along with several council members and most of the colony's senior staff. They all stared upward with expressions of horror and fascination. The alien ships were indeed moving, breaking their 3-month orbital pattern for the first time since their arrival. But they weren't descending toward the colony. Instead, they were moving outward, toward the edge of the system. Are they leaving? Someone asked, hope creeping into their voice. No, Security Chief Park said grimly, lowering his binoculars. Look at the long-range sensors. Sarah followed his gaze to the nearest display screen, where the colony's orbital monitoring system showed the bigger picture. The alien ships weren't leaving. They were repositioning, forming a perfect sphere around the entire star system. They're creating a blockade, Administrator Reeves breathed. Nothing gets in or out. But why now? Dr. Patterson asked. What changed? The answer came from an unexpected source. Jenny Walsh pushed through the crowd, her face pale but determined. I've been monitoring their communications, she said. Not trying to decode them, that's impossible, but analyzing the patterns, the frequency, the timing. And? Sarah prompted. The pattern changed yesterday. For 3 months, they've been transmitting regular status reports, I think. Short, regular bursts every 6 hours, like clockwork. But yesterday, the pattern shifted. The transmissions became longer, more complex, and they started including new elements. New elements? Administrator Reeves stepped forward. What kind of new elements? Jenny pulled up a datapad, her fingers flying across the screen. I think they were transmitting our responses to something. Our attempts at communication, our behavioral patterns, our social structures. Everything they've learned about us in the past 3 months. The implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. They were reporting back to someone. Someone who's been making decisions based on their intelligence. And now that someone has made their decision, Security Chief Park said grimly. The question is, what was the decision? They didn't have to wait long to find out. The message came at noon, broadcast across every frequency just as the first one had been 3 months earlier. But this time, the voice was different, deeper, more resonant, carrying an authority that made the colonists' bones vibrate. Children of Earth, the voice began, and Sarah felt a chill at the condescending tone. We have observed your kind for many cycles, watching as you spread across the stars like a plague, consuming resources and destroying the worlds you touch. We came to your small colony seeking evidence that your species might be capable of change, that you might have evolved beyond your destructive nature. Administrator Reeves grabbed the nearest microphone. This is Colonial Administrator Victoria Reeves. We're prepared to discuss any concerns you may have about our... Silence. The alien voice cut through her words like a blade. You will listen. You will understand. And you will face judgment. The transmission continued, and with each word, Sarah felt her heart sink deeper into her chest. We offered you a chance to demonstrate the mercy you claim to value. We presented ourselves as refugees, beings in need of compassion and assistance. Your response has been illuminating. Sarah's mind raced. They had responded with offers of help, invitations to dialogue, attempts at peaceful contact. What had they done wrong? You offered words, the voice continued, as if reading her thoughts. Empty words, while your security forces prepared for conflict. While your leaders debated whether we posed a threat. While your people whispered fears and suspicions in their dwellings. You spoke of mercy while your hearts harbored only fear and mistrust. That's not true, Dr. Patterson whispered, but his voice lacked conviction. We monitored your communications, the alien voice went on. Your private conversations, your council meetings, your individual thoughts spoken aloud when you believed yourselves unobserved. We heard the fear in your voices, the suspicion in your words, the calculations of how you might defend yourselves against us. Sarah felt sick. They had been afraid. They had been suspicious. They had discussed defensive measures, evacuation plans, ways to get a message to Earth warning of the potential threat. All perfectly reasonable responses to an unknown situation, but apparently not what the visitors had been hoping to see. True mercy, the voice continued, requires trust. It requires the willingness to help those in need without reservation, without fear, without the calculation of personal cost. Your species has proven incapable of such mercy. You have failed the test. Wait, Administrator Reeves tried again. We can do better. Give us another chance. Tell us what you want us to do. The time for chances has passed. The voice was implacable. Your species will face the consequences of its failure. But we are not without mercy ourselves. We will not destroy you immediately. Instead, we will give you time to contemplate your failures, to understand what you have brought upon yourselves. The transmission ended, leaving the colonists in stunned silence. Then, slowly, the questions began. What did they mean, consequences? Someone asked. How long do we have? Another voice called out. What are they going to do to us? Sarah looked around at the frightened faces surrounding her and felt the weight of her failure as the colony's psychologist. She was supposed to understand behavior, to predict responses, to help guide decision-making. Instead, she had completely misread the situation. Or had she? Wait, she said, her voice cutting through the babble of panicked voices. Wait. Something's not right. Administrator Reeves turned to her. What do you mean? Sarah's mind was racing, pieces of a puzzle falling into place. Think about what they said. They claimed to be testing our capacity for mercy, but the test was fundamentally flawed. How so? Security Chief Park asked. They appeared as a potential threat, unknown aliens with advanced technology, maintaining communication silence, conducting surveillance. Any rational response would include caution, defensive preparations, and yes, fear. They weren't testing our capacity for mercy. They were testing our capacity for suicidal naivety. Dr. Patterson frowned. But they said they presented themselves as refugees. One message, Sarah interrupted. One message claiming to seek mercy, followed by 3 months of silence and surveillance. That's not how genuine refugees behave. That's how infiltrators behave. The crowd was listening now, hope beginning to replace despair on some faces. But Jenny Walsh spoke up from the back of the group. Even if you're right, Dr. Chen, it doesn't change anything. They've made their decision. We failed their test, fair or not. Maybe, Sarah said. But I don't think this is about testing our mercy at all. I think it's about something else entirely. Before anyone could ask what she meant, the lights went out. Emergency power kicked in a moment later, bathing the observation deck in a red glow that made everyone look like they were covered in blood. But it was the view outside that made people gasp in terror. The alien ships were back, descending from orbit in perfect formation. But they weren't the same ships that had been watching the colony for 3 months. These were larger, more angular, their surfaces covered in what looked like weapon emplacements. My God, Administrator Reeves whispered. They're going to attack. But Sarah shook her head. No. Look at the formation. Look at the approach pattern. They're not positioning for an attack. They're positioning for a landing. She was right. The alien ships settled onto the plains outside the colony with surprising gentleness, their landing creating small dust storms but no craters, no explosions, no immediate signs of hostile intent. Maybe they want to talk, Dr. Patterson suggested hopefully. Maybe, Sarah said, but her psychologist's instincts were screaming warnings. Or maybe they want to deliver their judgment in person. The answer came within the hour. A group of figures emerged from the nearest alien ship, walking across the plains toward the colony with measured, deliberate steps. They were humanoid in shape but clearly not human, taller, more slender, with elongated limbs and heads that seemed slightly too large for their bodies. They wore what looked like environmental suits, but the material was unlike anything in the colony's databases. They're coming to the main gate, Security Chief Park reported from his position at the colony's command center. 6 of them, moving slowly, no visible weapons. Should we meet them? Administrator Reeves asked. Do we have a choice? Sarah replied. The colony's leadership gathered at the main gate, watching through the reinforced glass as the alien delegation approached. Up close, the visitors were even more unsettling. Their movements were too fluid, too graceful, like predators trying to appear harmless. Their faces were hidden behind the faceplates of their suits, but Sarah could see the suggestion of large eyes, narrow features, and something that might have been a mouth. The lead figure stopped just outside the gate and raised one hand in what might have been a gesture of greeting. When it spoke, its voice was broadcast directly into the colony's communication system. We come to deliver judgment, it said, its voice different from the one that had spoken from orbit, lighter, more melodious, but no less chilling. Open your gates. Face the consequences of your failure. Administrator Reeves stepped forward, her voice shaking slightly. We're prepared to discuss whatever concerns you may have. But we need to understand what you want from us. What we want, the alien said, is irrelevant. What matters is what you have shown us about your species. You have proven that humanity is incapable of true mercy, incapable of trust, incapable of rising above your base nature. You are a threat to the peace of the galaxy. That's not true, Dr. Patterson protested. We've built a peaceful colony here. We've harmed no one. You have harmed no one because you have lacked the opportunity, the alien replied. Your species' history is written in blood. Your expansion across the stars follows the same pattern: consume, exploit, move on. You would bring war to the galaxy if left unchecked. Sarah felt the pieces clicking into place. This was never about mercy, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the communication system. This was about finding an excuse. The alien's head turned toward her, and though she couldn't see its expression, she felt the weight of its attention. Explain. You didn't come here to test our capacity for mercy, Sarah continued, her psychologist's training taking over. You came here to test our capacity for weakness. You wanted us to drop our guard, to trust blindly, to make ourselves vulnerable. When we maintained reasonable caution in the face of an unknown threat, you declared us failures. Your point, the alien asked. My point is that this is a setup. You're not judges delivering cosmic justice. You're conquerors looking for moral justification. You've already decided what you want to do to us. This whole charade is just to make yourselves feel better about it. The silence that followed was deafening. The alien delegation stood motionless, as if Sarah's words had triggered some kind of internal debate. Finally, the lead figure spoke again. You are perceptive. But your perceptions change nothing. The decision has been made. Your species will be contained. Contained how? Administrator Reeves asked. Your colony will be preserved as a specimen. Your people will be studied, catalogued, and eventually relocated to a world where they can do no harm. Your species' expansion will end here. The words hit the colonists like a physical blow. They weren't going to be killed, they were going to be caged, turned into zoo animals for alien study. And if we refuse? Security Chief Park asked. Then you will be eliminated, the alien replied matter-of-factly. The choice is yours. Submit to containment, or face extinction. Sarah's mind was racing. There had to be a way out of this, some angle she hadn't considered. You say you want to contain our species' expansion. But we're just one small colony. Earth will send other ships, other colonies. You can't contain all of humanity. Can we not? The alien's voice carried a note of amusement. Your communications with Earth have been severed for 3 months. Your ships have been destroyed. Your homeworld believes this colony has been lost to natural disaster. No one is coming to save you. The words hit like a sledgehammer. The communications blackout hadn't been to prevent them from calling for help, it had been to prevent them from warning Earth. The visitors hadn't been studying the colony. They'd been eliminating it from existence, making it disappear so completely that no one would ever know what had happened. You're monsters, Jenny Walsh whispered, her voice carrying clearly through the communication system. No, the alien replied. We are gardeners. And you are weeds that must be removed before they can spread. That's when Sarah realized the truth. The terrible, inevitable truth that had been staring them in the face for 3 months. You're not going to let us live, she said quietly. The containment, the study, the relocation, it's all lies. You're going to kill us all. The alien's silence was answer enough. Why? Administrator Reeves asked, her voice breaking. Why not just kill us immediately? Why the charade? Because, the alien said, we are not monsters. We do not kill without cause. We give every species the chance to prove itself worthy of life. Your species has failed that test. But the test was rigged, Sarah protested. You made it impossible to pass. Did we? The alien's voice carried a note of genuine curiosity. Tell me, Dr. Chen, for we know who you are, what would you have done differently? How would you have responded to our arrival? Sarah thought about it, running through the possibilities in her mind. I would have been cautious. I would have maintained security protocols. I would have tried to communicate, yes, but I would have been prepared for the possibility that you weren't what you claimed to be. Exactly, the alien said. Your response was rational, logical, and entirely consistent with your species' nature. You are predators, Dr. Chen. Intelligent predators, but predators nonetheless. And predators cannot be trusted with the peace of the galaxy. So you're going to exterminate us to protect your peace? Sarah's voice was growing stronger, fueled by righteous anger. You're going to commit genocide to prevent the possibility of future conflict? We are going to eliminate a threat before it can spread, the alien corrected. Your species has demonstrated its nature repeatedly throughout your history. War, conquest, exploitation, these are the constants of human behavior. Left unchecked, you will bring these traits to every world you touch. And what about your species? Sarah shot back. What about your history? Are you telling me you've never fought wars? Never conquered other worlds? Never made mistakes? The alien was silent for a long moment. When it spoke again, its voice carried a different tone, older, sadder, more complex. We have made our mistakes, Dr. Chen. We have learned from them. That is why we now serve as guardians of the galaxy's peace. Guardians? Sarah laughed bitterly. You're not guardians. You're bullies. You've appointed yourselves judges and executioners of entire species based on your own prejudices and fears. Perhaps, the alien acknowledged. But we are the bullies with the power to enforce our will. That is the reality of the situation. Sarah felt something snap inside her. 3 months of fear, uncertainty, and mounting dread crystallized into pure, focused rage. You want to see the nature of humanity, she said, her voice carrying across the communication system to every colonist in the settlement. You want to see what we're really capable of when we're pushed to the brink? Dr. Chen, Administrator Reeves warned, but Sarah was beyond caring about diplomatic niceties. You made one mistake, she continued, staring directly at the alien delegation. You assumed that because we were cautious, because we were afraid, because we didn't immediately trust you, that we were weak. You confused prudence with cowardice. And what do you believe you can do against us? The alien asked. You have no weapons that can penetrate our defenses. No ships that can escape our blockade. No allies who will come to your aid. We have something you don't understand, Sarah said. We have the one thing that your species apparently lacks. And what is that? Sarah smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. We have the willingness to die on our feet rather than live on our knees. The alien's response was swift and decisive. Then you have chosen extinction. The attack came without warning. Energy beams lanced down from the alien ships, targeting the colony's power generators, communication arrays, and defensive systems. But the colonists had not been idle during the 3 months of waiting. Security Chief Park had used the time to prepare for exactly this possibility. Hidden weapons emplacements erupted from camouflaged positions around the colony, returning fire with everything they had. The alien ships, caught off guard by the sudden resistance, faltered in their attack. Several took hits, their shields flaring as human weapons found their mark. But the colonists' triumph was short-lived. The alien ships regrouped quickly, their superior technology asserting itself. One by one, the human weapons were destroyed, their positions overrun by alien ground forces that moved with inhuman speed and precision. Fall back to the secondary positions, Security Chief Park ordered over the colony's emergency communication system. Execute Contingency Plan Delta. Sarah found herself swept up in the retreat, pulled along by the tide of fleeing colonists. Around her, she could hear the sounds of battle, the whine of energy weapons, the crash of collapsing buildings, the screams of the wounded and dying. This way, Jenny Walsh grabbed her arm, pulling her toward a concealed entrance to the colony's underground maintenance tunnels. We can reach the shelter from here. They plunged into the tunnels, joining a stream of colonists making their way through the narrow passages. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows on the walls, and the air was thick with dust and the smell of fear. How long can we hold out down here? Sarah asked as they moved through the tunnels. Not long, Jenny admitted. Maybe a few hours if we're lucky. The tunnels weren't designed as a long-term shelter. They emerged into a large underground chamber that had been converted into an emergency shelter. Hundreds of colonists were already there, huddled in family groups, their faces pale with terror. Children cried while their parents tried to comfort them with lies about everything being okay. Administrator Reeves stood at the center of the chamber, coordinating the evacuation efforts. When she saw Sarah, she hurried over. "Dr. Chen, thank God you're safe. We need to talk." She led Sarah to a quiet corner of the chamber, where the colony's remaining leadership had gathered. Dr. Patterson was there, along with Engineer Rodriguez and several others. Security Chief Park was conspicuously absent. "David's dead," Administrator Reeves said quietly, reading the question in Sarah's eyes. "He died buying us time to evacuate. Along with about 200 others." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. 200 people dead because of her defiance. 200 lives lost because she couldn't keep her mouth shut. "It's not your fault," Dr. Patterson said, seeing the expression on her face. "They were going to kill us anyway. At least this way, we die fighting." "Die fighting?" Sarah laughed bitterly. "Look around you, James. We're not fighting. We're hiding in a hole, waiting for them to come finish us off." "Then what do you suggest?" Administrator Reeves asked. "Surrender? Beg for mercy from beings who have already decided to exterminate us?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment, thinking. Around them, the sounds of battle continued to filter down through the rock and earth, distant explosions, the whine of energy weapons, the rumble of collapsing structures. "They want to see the nature of humanity," she said finally. "They want to confirm their prejudices about our species. So far, we've given them exactly what they expected: fear, violence, and death. What else can we give them?" Engineer Rodriguez asked. "We're not warriors. We're farmers, engineers, doctors. We came here to build a new world, not to fight a war." "Maybe that's exactly what we need to show them," Sarah said, an idea beginning to form in her mind. "They think they understand us. They think they've seen our true nature. But have they really?" She stood up, pacing the small space as her thoughts crystallized. "They've seen us afraid. They've seen us suspicious. They've seen us violent. But have they seen us at our best? Have they seen what we're capable of when we're not fighting for our lives?" "What are you suggesting?" Administrator Reeves asked. "I'm suggesting we give them something they don't expect," Sarah replied. "Something that might challenge their assumptions about our species." "Such as?" Sarah took a deep breath. "Such as actual mercy." The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Dr. Patterson spoke. "Sarah, they're trying to kill us. They've murdered 200 of our people. You want to show them mercy?" "I want to show them what mercy really looks like," Sarah replied. "Not the naive trust they were testing for, but real mercy. The kind that exists even in the face of hatred and violence." "That's insane," Engineer Rodriguez protested. "They'll just kill us all." "They're going to kill us all anyway," Sarah pointed out. "The question is, how do we want to die? As the monsters they think we are, or as something better?" Administrator Reeves was quiet for a long moment, considering. Finally, she spoke. "What exactly are you proposing?" Sarah outlined her plan, watching as the expressions on the faces around her shifted from disbelief to understanding to grim determination. It was crazy, perhaps suicidal, but it was also the only chance they had of proving that humanity was more than the sum of its fears and prejudices. "It won't work," Dr. Patterson said when she finished. "They won't care. They've already made up their minds about us." "Maybe," Sarah agreed. "But maybe not. Maybe there's still a chance to show them something they haven't seen before." "And if we're wrong?" Administrator Reeves asked. "Then we die," Sarah said simply. "But we die as humans, not as the monsters they think we are." The vote was close, but Sarah's plan was approved. The preparations took several hours, during which the sounds of battle above gradually faded into silence. When the underground chamber's communication system crackled to life, they all knew what it meant. "Humans," the alien voice was the same one that had spoken at the gate. "Your resistance has ended. Your military forces have been eliminated. You have 1 hour to surrender before we begin eliminating the civilian population. Administrator Reeves took the microphone. This is Colonial Administrator Victoria Reeves. We're prepared to discuss terms. There are no terms, the alien replied. Surrender unconditionally, or face the consequences. We'll surrender, Administrator Reeves said. But we have wounded down here. We need medical assistance. There was a pause. Then, we will send a medical team. Any attempt at deception will result in immediate execution of all survivors. Understood, Administrator Reeves replied. We'll be waiting. The alien medical team arrived within the hour, accompanied by a heavily armed escort. They were different from the delegation that had spoken at the gate, smaller, more delicate, with visible medical equipment integrated into their suits. But their escort was clearly military, weapons at the ready. Where are the wounded? The lead medical officer asked as they entered the underground chamber. Over here, Dr. Patterson replied, leading them to a section of the chamber where several colonists lay on makeshift stretchers. They were indeed wounded, but not from the battle above. They were the victims of a carefully orchestrated deception. As the alien medical team began examining the wounded, Sarah watched their behavior carefully. They were professional, efficient, and surprisingly gentle. Their treatment of the human patients was competent and thorough, showing no signs of the callous disregard she might have expected from a species preparing to commit genocide. Your people are badly injured, the alien medical officer reported to Administrator Reeves. They require immediate surgery if they are to survive. Can you perform the surgery here? Administrator Reeves asked. No. They must be transported to our medical facility aboard the ship. But I warn you, any attempt to use them as hostages will result in their immediate death. We understand, Administrator Reeves said. We just want them to live. The alien medical team prepared to transport the wounded, but as they were loading the stretchers, one of the patients suddenly convulsed, crying out in apparent agony. The alien medical officer immediately moved to stabilize the patient, working with focused intensity to save a life that belonged to a species they had condemned to extinction. It was a small thing, perhaps meaningless in the larger context of interstellar genocide. But Sarah saw it for what it was, a crack in the facade of cold, calculated superiority that the aliens had maintained. They could kill humans as a matter of policy, but they couldn't watch one die without trying to help. Why? Sarah asked quietly, approaching the medical officer as they worked. The alien looked up, its large eyes visible through the faceplate of its suit. Why what? Why are you trying to save them? Your people have decided we're not worth saving. Why does it matter if one of us dies a few hours sooner? The alien was quiet for a moment, its attention focused on the patient. Finally, it spoke. Because it is what we do. We are healers. We preserve life. Even the lives of those you consider enemies? Life is life, the alien replied. The decision to end it is made by others. Our job is to preserve it when we can. Sarah felt something shift inside her. For the first time in 3 months, she felt a glimmer of hope. Then you don't agree with your people's decision? The alien's hands stilled for a moment. It is not my place to agree or disagree. I follow orders. But you have opinions. You have feelings about what's happening here. The alien looked at her, and Sarah saw something in its eyes that she hadn't expected, doubt. Your species is violent, it said quietly. Your history is filled with war, conquest, and cruelty. But you are also capable of compassion. Of sacrifice. Of love. The alien's voice was barely audible. I have seen your people die protecting others. I have seen them share their last food with strangers. I have seen them risk their lives to save those they barely know. Sarah's heart was racing. Then why are you letting us be destroyed? Because, the alien said, its voice heavy with something that might have been guilt, the capacity for good does not outweigh the capacity for evil. Your species will always be a threat to the peace of the galaxy. And your species? Sarah asked. What about your capacity for evil? What about the evil you're committing right now? The alien had no answer for that. It finished treating the patient and moved to the next stretcher, but Sarah could see that her words had had an effect. The doubt in its eyes had grown stronger.